Welcome our special guest, Krishnadas Kaviraj Prabhu. He's a disciple, he's a senior devotee, he's a disciple of Shrila Prabhupada, and he has been serving ISKCON, and specifically ISKCON Toronto and Ottawa, and Canada in general since 1974.
Yes.
So it's, 52 years, I guess? Yeah. Quite impressive, and we are grateful to be here.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraya. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in the classes of the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering of service unto the pure devotees, all that is inauspicious within the heart is practically destroyed to nil, and loving devotional service unto the glorious Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idang Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Danyang Swastyayanam Mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, and it was compiled by the incarnation of God, Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. So today, and that was a confirmation. So today we are reading a verse from the 7th canto. And this is the one that the verse and purport kind of summarize the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev. So this is 7, hang on a second. It's 7/8/17. That's what it is. Satyam vidatum nijabhritya bhasitam Vyaptim chabhuteshva kileshva chatmana Adrishyatat yadbhutarupam udvahan Stambe sabhayam namrigram namanusham. Satyam, true, vidatam, to prove. Nijabhritya bhasitam, the words of his own servant, Prahlad Maharaj, who had said that his Lord is present everywhere. Vyaptim, the pervasion, cha, and bhuteshu, among the living entities and elements, akileshu, all, cha, also, atmana, of himself, adrishyata, was seen, ati, very, adbhuta, wonderful, rupam, form, udvahan, taking, stambe, in the pillar, sabhayam, within the assembly, na, not, mrigam, an animal, na, nor, manusham, a human being. Translation. To prove that the statement of his servant Prahlad Maharaj was substantial, in other words, to prove that the Supreme Lord is present everywhere, even within the pillar of an assembly hall, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, exhibited a wonderful form never before seen. The form was neither that of a man nor that of a lion. Thus the Lord appeared in his wonderful form in the assembly hall. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad Maharaj, "Where is your Lord? Is he present in this pillar?" Prahlad Maharaj fearlessly replied, "Yes, my Lord is present everywhere." Therefore, to convince Hiranyakashipu that the statement of Prahlad Maharaj was unmistakably true, the Lord appeared from the pillar. The Lord appeared as half lion and half man, so that Hiranyakashipu could not understand whether the great giant was a lion or a human being. To substantiate Prahlad's statement, the Lord proved that his devotee, as declared in Bhagavad Gita, is never vanquished. Konteya pratijanihi na me bhakta pranasyati. Prahlad Maharaj's demoniac father had repeatedly threatened to kill Prahlad, but Prahlad was confident that he could not be killed, since he was protected by the Supreme Lord. By appearing from the pillar, the Lord encouraged his devotee, saying in effect, "Don't worry, I am present here." By manifesting his form as Nrsimhadev, the Lord also preserved the truth of Lord Brahma's promise that Hiranyakashipu was not to be killed by any animal or any man. The Lord appeared in a form that could not be said to be fully a man or a lion. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitamanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I pray to Srila Prabhupada and to Lord Nrsimhadev and to Shushi Gornitai and to all of you that I may be able to say something that is worthy of hearing today. So, in celebration of the appearance of Lord Nrsimhadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his incarnation of anger, and we have to get a little bit of an understanding of what brought Lord Nrsimhadev to that point of being so angry that he ended up having to appear in this form as anger. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that anger is very polluting, and it really causes one to lose one's consciousness and fall into the material pool. So how is it that the Lord himself can become angry? So we have to understand there's a lot of background to this whole story. When we describe, sometimes I've tried to explain this story to people who are non-devotees. And it's a little tricky because they just don't get it. How somebody's father can get killed horribly. Yeah. And then the son is like offering a flower garland and praising the Supreme Lord for completely destroying his father, ripping him to pieces, and even ripping his intestines out and wearing them as garlands and everything. It becomes pretty grotesque. So I was like, is that God? Well, yes, but he appears that way because he is so angry, because Hiranyakashipu, he actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, created Hiranyakashipu just for this purpose, to show how protective he is of his devotees. And so we know the story goes back to Jai and Vijay, and they're guarding the gates of Vaikuntha, and they're standing there being good guards, and these 4 young boys, the Kumaras, appear on the scene and say, we would like to go see Lord Vishnu. And they look at these boys they're just probably about 3 or 4 years old in their bodies. And these big guards look at them and go, who are you, little boys, to be wanting to go see Lord Vishnu? And of course, they say, well, we are devotees of Lord Vishnu, and no, sorry, you cannot come to see Lord Vishnu because you are not ready, you are not mature enough to go and see Lord Vishnu. Of course, they did not understand that the 4 Kumaras were great saintly persons and were eternally in that form, because that's how they didn't want to be ever bothered by sex desire. And so they maintained those very young bodies. So upon being rejected in that way, the Kumaras said, we will curse you to now take birth in the material world for many, many births. And Lord Vishnu, having heard that, because it's quite a heavy thing, and for his gatekeeper suddenly to be cursed, Lord Vishnu, knowing everything, he immediately arrives on the scene and goes, excuse me? What's going on here? And so he sees that the 4 Kumaras have come to see him, so he immediately accepts them and greets them greatly, and then immediately the Jai and Vijay go, oh no, we made a big mistake. And so Lord Vishnu says, well, don't worry, I will state that you will, Jai and Vijay, you will only have to take birth in the material world either 7 times as devotees, or 4 times, 3 times, sorry, 3 times as demons. And so, thinking that they wanted to get back to their place as fast as possible, and of course knowing Vishnu knows everything, and he knows the desires of his devotees, and he knows that they would want to get back to their service as fast as possible. He arranged, he made that, it's all his arrangement. And he says, and they both say, yes, we want 3 births as demons. And so immediately there's, they vanish from the scene and they go and take birth. And one of the first appearances of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyaksha was a very horrible demon who did all kinds of nonsense and ended up having a great big war with the demigods. And he was fighting with the demigods, but of course Lord Vishnu, because Lord Vishnu and Krishna always says in the Bhagavad Gita as well that I am equal to all. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. I'm equal to every living entity. But one who renders me some devotional service, then I reciprocate with them. And so because the demigods, they're always rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna reciprocates and ends up protecting them. And so Hiranyaksha and many of the other demons got taken care of, killed by Lord Vishnu. And Hiranyakashipu, upon finding out this, was really upset with Lord Vishnu. And it's when you read that chapter, has anybody read that chapter recently? The 7:2? Yeah. It's quite interesting how confused Hiranyakashipu was about the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because he talks about Lord Vishnu being the Supreme Lord, but at the same time, he's saying, I will cut off his head and drink his blood. It's like, well, you know, the Supreme Personality of Godhead doesn't have blood that we can see, and I mean, or that we, you know, in the same way that we have blood, that our blood maintains our life. For Lord Vishnu, he may sometimes, in reciprocation with his devotees, or Krishna in reciprocation with devotees, may show blood, just like he did with Bhishma Dev on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Bhishma Dev was shooting the arrows at Krishna, and Krishna was getting hit by the arrows, and there was blood coming out, but he said it was just like the kisses of the gopis. He felt them just like the kisses of the gopis. And Bhishma Dev was fighting him fiercely, but that's the special rasa that, you know, Bhishma Dev and Krishna have in that relationship of chivalry. So Hiranyakashipu has now been put into that kind of relationship also. You know, his name is Jai, and it's actually Jai who's Hiranyakashipu. And so he's actually now put in that same position of having that relationship of chivalry with the Supreme Lord, in the sense that he's going to get to fight the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And, you know, we know the story of Banasura from Krishna book. You know, he has all those arms, and he's going, I need to fight somebody, you know, and he starts breaking mountains and everything, and I can't find anybody who's a worthy opponent. And he just is frustrated like anything. And so he finally Krishna comes, and Krishna proves to be a very worthy opponent, cuts off all his arms and just leaves him with 4. And so in that way, you know, we understand that there's frustration when you have that much power. There's a little bit of frustration. Of course, Krishna's never really frustrated, but Krishna wants to show his devotees and everyone how powerful he is. So he creates a personality like Hiranyakashipu. He makes all the arrangements, you know, Jai and Vijay falling down and, you know, ending up in the material world as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. He creates that whole situation just to show how great he is. You know, when you go to see any movie, I mean, normally we don't go to see many movies, but anybody who's seen a movie, when there's a bad person and a good person, a lot of times it shows the bad person in the beginning is kind of, you know, getting more stronger and is hurting the good person and seems to be winning the day, right? And it just sort of builds up the demon so that when he eventually gets taken care of, everybody at the end of the movie is like, yay! He got killed. So it's the same kind of thing with Hiranyakashipu. Krishna Lord Vishnu allows Hiranyakashipu to be built up, and he becomes, you know, he slaughters a whole bunch of people. He you know, terrorizes the demigods. He subdues them all. And he takes the throne of Lord Indra, and now he's in charge of all the planets in the heavenly systems. And even Lord Brahma knows that he can't do anything because he gave him the benediction that he can't be killed by, you know, any human being. And the demigods are the very high level of human beings. So in this way, he's now, I'm it. I am the greatest, And so he's become that super demon. And then, not only does he become the super demon, but his son, he tries to make a good arrangement. I'm going to send my son to school. He'll become also a great demon, and he'll be able to help me carry on ruling the universe and just destroying everything in our path, and we can enjoy forever together. That's basically what Hiranyakashipu wanted. And but Prahlad, having heard from Narada in the womb the Srimad Bhagavatam and all the very transcendental knowledge, he wanted no part of that. So when he finally got sent to school, his teachers were starting to, teach all kinds of material things and how to manipulate things in your favor and cheat people and kill people, and it was all meant to just become an assistant of Hiranyakashipu. But Prahlad Maharaj didn't want to have anything to do with that, and so whenever he was alone with his friends, when the teachers weren't there, what happens, they have playtime and like that. So Prahlad Maharaj started preaching to them. No, you must become devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's the only way to actually have, a proper time in this life and in the next. And so when his father came to ask him, what have you learned at school today? Just like many parents do. Well, how was school today? Oh yeah, it was great. That's sort of when they get to be teenagers, you kids, when they get to grow older, it'll be, how was school today? But, Prahlad Maharaj wasn't like that. He immediately saw, okay, you asked me? I just told all my friends about how they should become devotees of the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. And Hiranyakashipu was like, Vishnu? He's the one who killed my brother and killed all the other demons and my friends, and how can you worship Vishnu? And Prahlad Maharaj just kept preaching to him, basically saying that, well, if you don't worship Lord Vishnu, you will end up, in a very precarious position. And Hiranyakashipu just got really, really upset. So that's when he started saying, okay, well, if are you really going to keep doing this? And Prahlad Maharaj was definitely fixed in his ways and kept saying that. And so he's, all right, well then I will have to kill you. If you are going to preach that everybody has to become a servant of Vishnu, then I have been against Vishnu for a long time. He killed my brother Hiranyaksha, and so you are going to end up meeting a horrible death. And so then he comprises so many ways of trying to kill Prahlad. He tries to poison him, puts him in a pit of snakes. He tries to get an elephant to step on him. And of course, each time that these things are happening, Lord Vishnu's witnessing everything, right? He's super soul. He's even within Hiranyakashipu's heart. He's everywhere. He's seeing this all go on, and he's just starting to get really, really upset. It's like, how can you do this to my devotee? And he's protecting his devotee all the way through. Prahlad Maharaj does not get affected by the poison because in the food, because he offers everything and it becomes sanctified and purified. It becomes prasadam, so that he doesn't get affected. And he gets put into the pit of snakes, and of course all the snakes, Krishna's in their heart as well. The Paramatma's in their heart, and they don't touch him either. The elephant, when he tries to put him under the foot of the elephant and try to get the elephant to step on him, the elephant also has the Lord in his heart. And he goes, no, I'm being told not to do this, so I'm not going to do it. And so, Hiranyakashipu's getting very frustrated, but Vishnu is getting even more angry. And So as that anger is building, the frustration in Hiranyakashipu is building. And so he just starts screaming at Prahlad, how can this be happening? I've tried to throw you off a cliff. I've tried to have you stepped on by an elephant, poisoned, and put in a pit of poisonous snakes. I've done everything to try to kill you, and it's just frustrating. So how is this happening? And of course Prahlad says, well, my Lord. And so that's when Hiranyakashipu says, well, where is this Lord Vishnu? And of course Prahlad says he's everywhere. And as we heard from the purport, that in order to uphold that promise that he is everywhere, that statement of Prahlad to his father, then Hiranyakashipu thinks, well, is he inside this pillar? And as soon as he says that, he doesn't actually break the pillar, but he actually hits the pillar with his fist. And right then there's this huge roar. And it's described that this roar is so loud that it almost cracks the lining of the universe. And you know that the lining of the universe, the first level of the universe is it's 10,000 yojanas, I think, of earth. And then it's 10 times that of water. And then it's 10 times that of air. And then 10 times that of ether. And then 10 times that of mind. And 10 times that of intelligence. And 10 times that of ahankar, of false ego. So there's all these layers, and that sound practically cracked the universe. Sometimes you see they show these pictures online of the different nebulas and things that they're looking through their telescopes and seeing all these things, and you think that sound that came out of that pillar actually reverberated through all those planets, all those stars, all those black holes that they think are out there. Everything, that sound was, it felt like everybody on all of those planets was like, what is going on? And then that's when Lord Nrsingadev finally breaks out of the pillar and engages in this fight. He finally gets to fight and show his prowess with this great demon who has also been built up to show that he's got so much prowess as well. I mean, he's subjugated all the demigods. He's controlling the entire universe. So everybody that's heard this big sound is actually under the control of Hiranyakashipu, but then all of a sudden there's something that's shaking up the universe. What is it? And it is the roar from Lord Nrsingadev as he comes out of the pillar, and he begins this epic battle with Hiranyakashipu. And it's quite a battle. I mean, they battle for a long time, and sometimes the demigods are thinking, Hiranyakashipu has a lot of mystic powers, so he gets caught up by Lord Nrsingadev, and then he's able to break free, and the demigods go, oh no, because they think Lord Vishnu might be in trouble. It's like there's a little bit of a lack of faith or whatever, or it could be just Yoga Maya in the same way that Mother Jasoda thinks that Krishna is going to get into trouble, going into the forest. So she makes all these talismans and things to hang around his neck and make sure that he's going to be safe from all the bad things that could go on in the forest. So in this way, Hiranyakashipu is having this really amazing battle with Lord Vishnu, and they're fighting it out and going back and forth. And I've played Hiranyakashipu in a play with Bhakti Marg Swami, and Bhakti Marg Swami was Nrsingadev, and I was Hiranyakashipu. And we had some pretty good battles. I mean, and I've been Ravana and Maharaj was Jatayu one time in the Ram Leela. And so Maharaj and I have had a lot of battles and plays over the years. And but it's really an epic battle. And it, when you read the battle, you understand how great Lord Nrsimhadev is. I mean, he really makes Hiranyakashipu look small and almost insignificant in comparison to him. And he, sometimes Hiranyakashipu can look large too, like he has this, yoga ability of sometimes looking very large as well. And so it goes back and forth with the demigods. It just goes up and down, back and forth. And then finally, when it gets to the proper time, that's when Lord Nrsimhadev just grabs him. He grabs Hiranyakashipu, puts him across his lap, and that's when he takes his nails and he just sticks them right into his abdomen and pulls him apart. And then he starts, reveling in his victory, and he's splashing blood everywhere. Do you know the story that actually when they first had this story described to them, the devotees who were painting, and Prabhupada wanted the paintings for the books, and they were painting Nrsimhadev, and they came and they showed Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked at it, and there was, practically no blood. I mean, they were just a little bit of blood coming out of and Prabhupada said, "No, I want more blood." and so they put a bit more blood on, and they came back, and Prabhupada said, "No more blood." And so finally they came back, and there's that picture of where there's blood, everywhere. And because it's that blood that is representative of the victory of Lord Nrsimhadev over Hiranyakashipu and his protection. It is a testament to the protection, the lengths to which Lord Vishnu will go to protect his devotees. I don't know, has anybody here ever had an experience where they've had to call upon Lord Nrsimhadev to protect you? I know a couple, but I wanted to ask if anybody has been in a particularly bad situation and you go, "Nrsimhadev!" and he saved you? Yeah, go ahead.
I had a situation when I was going here to my husband, and at customs, at airport customs, they wouldn't let me go because just it was after war started, and there were other Russians with me, like group of 10 people, and no one was admitted by custom officers to get to the plane. But I was just already going back and looking for booking hotels and so on, and praying to Nrsimhadev. And it was just the last minute when the officer, the boarding was already closed, and it was the last minute when the custom officer said, when I was praying to Nrsimhadev, "You come here," and all the group of 10 people just ran to the officer. No, only she. And he said, "You can go, but you cannot." And all the other 10 people from Russia, they were left at the customs. It was in Istanbul airport. It was just a miracle. And some other situations like this. But Nrsimhadev, he really fast in answering prayers. And one time it was not so. I was in Ufa, in my hometown in Ufa, we had a deity of Nrsimhadev. And when the deity appeared, our temple president said, "You can pray to Nrsimhadev to purify your heart." And I was just a young devotee, and I didn't even know what does it mean. And I just everything was great in my life. And when I started praying, some things for purifying my heart, just some things started to happen in my life, which I didn't want to happen, and what was hard to me to experience them. And then just I realized I probably prayed too hard for purification. Because
Yes, actually praying to Lord Nrsimhadev for purification is really important. And I mean, we're all, in a sense, a little bit of Hiranyakashipus, right? Because as right now, the only thing that's stopping us from seeing Krishna is that we are thinking that we can still somehow enjoy this material nature. And it's deep-rooted. Because mentally I may be thinking, no, I want to serve Krishna, I want to do everything for Krishna, as all good devotees are sort of thinking. But at the same time, we may not have come to that totally mature place where we're seeing that Krishna is in everything, is there with everything, and everything needs to be given to him, and he's there beside us, and we can talk to him. We don't have that vision because we're still hanging on a little bit to that, Hiranyakashipu Hiranya means gold, and Kashipu means soft bed. So, yeah, so we're like that. We want wealth, and we want, leisure and pleasure like that. And it's just it's a difficult thing to get rid of. So when we pray to Lord Nrsimhadev to purify our hearts, we should almost think that Lord Nrsimhadev can take his nails that killed Hiranyakashipu, he can stick them in our heart, and he can rip out that deep-rooted material desires that are keeping us from seeing him face to face. And so it's something that we can pray to, and the appearance day of Lord Nrsimhadev reminds us of that. And of course we sing every morning, at after Mangal Artik and after many of the Artiks when we have Kirtan, we sing the Nrsimhadev prayers, and basically that's what we're asking. We're asking that, Lord Nrsimhadev, please come and just rip out my material desires. Allow me to become a pure servant of yourself. And then, of course, when we're chanting Hare Krishna, that's exactly what we're asking. We're asking, please allow me to become your pure servant. And it's by constant practice. We advance in devotional service according to the mercy of Krishna. It has nothing to do with what we do, in a sense. I mean, we cannot purchase the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can't force Krishna into our hearts. We can't force him to be before us. Like Prabhupada often said, many people come to me and say, can you show me God? No, we cannot just say, oh God, if you're here, come and show me. It's not like that. we have to actually develop the heart, mind, intelligence, and spiritual vision to actually come to that point where we're seeing Krishna face to face. And so it's really important to pray to Lord Nrsimhadev to rip out those material desires and help us to become fully fixed in devotional service. So Purnamasi tells this story one time of when they were on traveling Sankirtan. Actually, Bibi Govinda Maharaj was the Sankirtan leader, and he and another Grihasta, this was when he was a Grihasta, and this other devotee was a Grihasta, and both their wives were part of the traveling Sankirtan party, and there were a couple of other women, and they were in a van, and they were down somewhere in the U.S. Oh, thank you. They were down somewhere in the U.S., and they were driving along the road, and the one devotee was driving, and he fell asleep at the wheel. And the devotees in the back they suddenly felt that they were asleep. It was nighttime. And all of a sudden they felt that the van had gone off the road. And they woke up, and then they could feel that the van was no longer on the highway. And they just started going, Nrsimhadev, Nrsimhadev. And the van eventually came to a stop without but everything had kind of toppled off because they had, the things on shelves and stuff, and it had all kind of collapsed in. But when they got out of the van, they saw that the whole van, the side of the van was completely dented in, and there were these trees. There was a whole line of trees, and somehow the van had gone like this, and you could see the marks on the trees, and it had taken the bark off the trees all the way along, but they didn't actually hit a tree head on, which it probably would have killed maybe the two drivers, and who knows. But it would have been much, much worse. And they all ended up walking away from this without any injury. And even when the police came and the rescue workers, the ambulance, and they all were like shocked. How did that happen? And this van was so destroyed, and you just walking away from it. Of course, it was Lord Nrsingadev. And then my daughter, Krishna Chandra, she was in Belgium for the first year that the Bhaktivedanta College was operating in Radhadesh. And there was a friend of hers, one of the devotees there, who was walking one time in the forest near the temple. And this one man, she could see, was starting to follow her. There was nobody else around but this one guy had seen her go into the woods or something, but he was following her and getting closer and closer. And finally, he came right up to her, and he was just like going for her neck. And she just screamed out, "Nrsingadev!" And he just, his hands went like this, and he just froze. Like she yelled it out as loud as she possibly could, and he just froze. And she was able to just turn and run, and she looked back over her shoulder, and he was still standing there like this. So, obviously, Lord Nrsingadev just came and put his grip on him and wouldn't let him go. And so that's a pretty amazing story. And oftentimes when we go on trips and things like that, we should chant, the Nrsinga prayers before, as we're driving off, and when you're taking off in an airplane, a lot of times. I can remember in 1976 going on that legendary 747, and we flew to New York, and then we met with a whole bunch of devotees, and we all got on an Air India 747, and we flew to Calcutta. It was an amazing time, but I remember taking off from the New York airport, and there were 300 devotees on the airplane. There were some karmis, because 747 I think holds about 400 people, so there was about 100 people who were not devotees, but there were 300 devotees, and all 300 devotees were singing at the top of their lungs the Nrsingadev prayers, and the other people were like, "Wow, what's going on?" And then one time, also, as we were going across the Atlantic, I can remember we were having a big kirtan. There was Vishnu Jan Swami was on the airplane, and Tripurari Maharaj, and there was a bunch of really great souls, and this huge kirtan was going on, and they had put a set of Gaurnitai deities. On the 747 there was this little area that sort of sticks out the front like a bulb, and they had put the deities inside that bulb, and with a cushion and everything, and they kind of had put flowers, and it looked really nice. It was like a little altar. And so that was right at the front of the plane, and the way the 747s were built, the aisles went right up, and then there was an area where it crossed over right in front of that, and then came back down again. And so we just started circumambulating the whole and 300 devotees practically were up in the aisles, running up and down like this. And then at one point, the kirtan was getting really ecstatic, and everybody started jumping up and down. We were jumping and jumping and jumping, and then all of a sudden, the captain came down the stairs from the upper level, and he said, "Stop, stop, stop." And then he was like, "Okay." We all stopped, and he said, "Yeah, you can't do that. The wings were starting, the plane was actually going up and down." And he said, no, you can't do that. So anyway, it was pretty ecstatic, and Lord Nrsingadev protected us, kept the wings on the airplane, and we made it to Calcutta. But it was, definitely Lord Nrsingadev has protected the devotees over the years. We know that in New Vrindavan, when they got attacked there was a motorcycle gang. Has everybody heard this story? A few people have heard this story, yeah. And there was a motorcycle gang that came and started terrorizing the devotees. They grabbed some of the devotees and they had them at gunpoint, and they said, we're going to shoot this devotee unless you push those statues off the altar. And they'd actually taken 2 devotees up the hill, and they told them to start digging their graves. And they were up there on the hill, and then this was going on in the temple room where they were saying, unless you push the deities off the altar. And what happened was one of the devotees went and took Radharani and pushed her off the altar. She fell down, but when she hit the floor, the devotees said it must have been very similar to the noise that Nrsingadev made when he appeared from the pillar. It was really much louder than just marble hitting another piece of marble on the floor. They said it was super loud, and these devotees who were a couple of 100 yards away, way up on the hill, heard the noise, and even the guys who had them at gunpoint heard the noise, and it caused the guys at gunpoint to run and go and see what was going on. And they ran down and they saw what was going on, and somehow it filled them with fear. And they all got back on their motorcycles and just took off. So it was like Radharani saved, the devotees. She sacrificed herself to save the devotees. But it was, obviously Lord Nrsingadev had, I'm sure, he appeared in the hearts of those guys and was saying, "Yeah, I'm going to kill him." It's like So in this way, the Lord protects his devotees, and it doesn't mean that we necessarily won't die. I mean, nowadays we're hearing on the internet all the time of so many wonderful devotees, like, Shrila Prabhu and Agni Dev, and, there's so many sannyasis, and, it's only a matter of time before all of us end up in that same position. But it does seem to be a lot of very senior, wonderful devotees of Prabhupada that are passing away. And so it doesn't mean that we won't die, but it does mean that we will, even through death, we will be continually under the protection of Krishna. If we are, sincerely trying to be devotees of Krishna. There have been people who have come to ISKCON with ulterior motives. We know that there have been those who have come and tried to abuse the children and things like that. So they come with, there are some devotees who, they're not devotees, but they're people who come and act like devotees in order to make a very bad situation. And they're not going to experience the protection of Nrsingadev unless they completely repent. And it doesn't mean that they'll necessarily get back in the association of devotees, but if they really completely repent in their hearts and realize what they did was wrong, then perhaps Krishna can forgive them, because Krishna can forgive everything. When you think about the material world, is ekpadvita tribhuti, there's Tribhuti and Vibhuti. There's the 1 and a quarter of the spiritual sky, which is the material energy. So there are a lot of spirit souls. I mean, it's unlimited, the number of spirit souls. But I mean, there are a lot of spirit souls who have turned their back on Krishna, completely turned their back on Krishna. So all the activities that go on in the material nature, like even the fight between Hiranyakashipu, the differences between Hiranyakashipu and his son, and how horrible that was, is really nothing compared to just our turning our backs on Krishna and ending up in the material nature. And yet, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that if you turn to me, if you turn back to me, and you engage in the process of devotional service under the guidance of a spiritual master, then you will be able to come back to me. So Krishna is very forgiving. And I think that's one thing that, as devotees, we have to be forgiving also. And that's a very important quality to maintain peace and tranquility in our own minds and in the social structure. If we can actually learn to forgive, if we understand that, hey, all of us have our faults. We've all ended up here in the material world because we turned our back on Krishna. But if we're sincerely trying, then we can, work together to go back to Krishna. So it's really important to have that forgiveness, that quality of forgiveness. And really, that's what happens with Lord Nrsimhadev and Hiranyakashipu. One of the first things Prahlad Maharaj asks, when Lord Nrsimhadev is like, I came, I'm protecting you, what is it? I'm ready to give you any benediction you want. And he says, I want that my father, that he be forgiven and that he, be liberated and freed from this demoniac mentality that he had. And Lord Nrsimhadev says, yep, already taken care of that. Of course, we know that he had to go into 2 more bodies at least. And of course, they came back even in a 4th that we know of, as Jai and Vijay. So, but Krishna arranges all these things, and he takes care of those. And so many times in the Krishna book, you see that Krishna kills the demons, and then what happens? Their spirit comes out of them and merges right into him. And of course, that merging may be temporary, but they'll again get the opportunity to render service to Krishna. So Krishna is amazingly forgiving. And so that's the first thing that he gives to Prahlad Maharaj. And then, amazingly, he says, what else would you want, Prahlad Maharaj? And that's when he says, I want that you take all the sinful reactions of everybody in the entire universe and put them on me, and you take all of them back to Godhead. Whew. I mean, that is pretty amazing, isn't it? I mean, who of us, if we made it to, actually get the opportunity to ask for anything, would we ask for, I want all the sinful reactions on me? I mean, because we know, we even stub our toe and we're like, oh, I don't want that again. But, every sinful reaction, and Prahlad Maharaj was ready to take that on because of his compassionate, forgiving nature, that he wants all those spirit souls to give up all their sinful activities, put them all on me, and take them back to Godhead. So it's pretty amazing, but that's the kind of compassion that, Vaisheshika Prabhu is very much, of course, we know, into book distribution, and many of you have been at his classes where he talks about distributing Prabhupada's books and giving people that opportunity. And if we have that compassion for the people on the street, that, they may be rascals and fools and drunkards and so many things, but if we can just somehow or other get them to take a book and encourage them to be in their devotional service, then they can be saved. Which brings me to the day before Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day is a very important day. It's the appearance day of, or disappearance day of, no, the disappearance day of, no, wow. Prabhupada said that we should celebrate this devotee's Jayananda Prabhu. Yeah, I knew that would give it away. Jayananda Prabhu was so compassionate. He really embodied the compassion that Prahlad Maharaj had, practically. He was ready to do everything for serving Srila Prabhupada, to becoming purified, to being a vessel for taking the books out to people and giving people Krishna. And everybody who met him felt that from him. They could feel that genuineness, that I just want you to become Krishna conscious. And so many times, like Karandar Prabhu tells the story of one time they walked into a bar, and this one guy, is sitting with a whole bunch of people drinking beer and stuff, and he stands up and he goes, "Hey, Johnny Ananda!" And then he looks at Karandar and he says, "Oh, this must be the guy that you were telling me about, who's leading the temple so well and doing so many things." So Jayananda had been glorifying Karandar to this guy in the bar, and so it was just like amazing, and Jayananda had this way. There was one woman, when they first started doing the San Francisco Rath Yatras, apparently there was this one woman who was giving them a bit of a hard time with getting the permits from the city. And Jayananda, after the very first time the Rath Yatra went on, and he had heard that the devotees had this hard time getting the permits, he afterwards he would do things like he would, in appreciation for all the devotees who built the carts, he would make cakes and everything and have a big prasadam party for everything. And Jayananda was really into prasadam. So he baked this cake for this lady who was the one who, was the gatekeeper of the permits. And he delivered it to her and talked to her and everything. And she just fell head over heels for Jayananda. I mean, she was apparently a black lady and she was quite large and, a typical sort of clerk, that's really trying to hang on to their control. It's like, we don't give permits unless I say so. and she just fell in love with Jayananda. And from then on, the devotees never had a problem. And Jayananda, and even a couple of other times, Jayananda would bring her cakes and everything. And when she heard, one time they came and to get the permit, and she said, "Where's my friend Jayananda?" And they said, "Well, he passed away." And they were like, "Oh," and she just broke down. She started crying. And she cried and cried and cried, and it took them a little while to get the permit just because she was crying so much. But that was the kind of effect that Jayananda had, because he was so pure of heart. There's another time when Jayananda was in a store with another devotee. Actually, Murli Krishna tells this story, and Murli was the devotee with him in the store. Does anybody know Murli Krishna? He lives he lives on the Canadian side, across from Buffalo, and he's a Prabhupada disciple. And he used to come to the temple in Toronto on Jayananda's disappearance day and tell a lot of these stories. So he and Jayananda were in a hardware store one time. And Jayananda was the kind of devotee where he never asked for a new dhoti, or he just wore whatever he could find. and he had found this pair of pants that didn't quite fit around the middle. So he could get the zipper up most of the way, but the button at the top didn't fit. So he found this big safety pin, and he just kind of pinned it across the top. And Jayananda was a big guy, like he was 6'4", 6'5", and very, very large. And so they were in this store and hardware store, and they were going around getting things for the Rath Yatra cart, and Murli said to him, "Look, Jayananda, there's a whole bunch of overalls. Why don't you get a set of overalls and you can get rid of those pants that are, just held up with a..." And Jayananda was like, "Well, I don't know. I don't want to spend, Krishna's money on myself." That's how Jayananda felt all the time. It's like he didn't want anything spent on himself. And so he said, no. And then finally Murli just kept going, no, just, you can do it. And so he took the pants, and he tried them on in the change room, and he left them on, and they were going to check out. And as they were checking out, Jayananda forgot to mention, as they were checking out, that he was wearing these overalls that he had put on. And so immediately the security guard realized that they were trying to get out with these. And so they both got arrested and taken down to the police station. And they spent overnight. And the next day they went to the court, and his case came up, and Jayananda came before the judge, and he said, the judge said to him, "So you took these pairs of pants," and they had the security guard from the store. "Yes, judge, they took the pair of pants, and so what do you have to say for yourself?" And Jayananda just said, I've been a monk my entire life. I've never spent my spiritual master's money. I've never spent it. And I've just really tried to just serve and to help people, and I'm just trying to, I just couldn't bring myself to spending the money on the pants, okay? and the judge was like, "Oh, okay, well, you know what? We'll let you go this time. Case dismissed." Bang. and immediately, actually, just before that, what happened was the judge was going, "Well, let's see what we're going to do." And the clerk who was sitting there, taking the note, he said, "I'll pay for half." And somebody else said, "I'll pay for the other half." And so they paid for it. And there was a fine, actually, just the amount of the pants. I think he had to pay for the pants, and the fine on top of it was the amount for the pants. And so the clerk said he'll pay half, and the other guy, somebody else in the courtroom said, "I'll pay the other half." And so Jayananda, they got the pants, and they got out of the court case. And right towards the end, Jayananda had this cancer that had spread to his lymph nodes. And you have lymph nodes in your armpits and in your groin here and on your neck. And it had become so bad that Murli Krishnadas, who was looking after him, helping to look after him at the time, said that it was just like he had grapefruits here and under his armpits and here in his legs. And Jayananda, typical Jayananda, he just slept on the floor all the time. He was just sleeping on the floor in the temple. And the devotees finally said, "Jayananda, look, you can't be this sick and be sleeping on the floor. We will get you a hospital bed." So they got him a hospital bed, and they put it in the room. And Murli Krishnadas remembers that evening when they got the hospital bed, he said, "Jayananda, so sleep in the bed tonight. You can get some really good sleep, and maybe it'll help you feel a bit better." And so he closed the door. And he went to sleep himself, and then he came back in the morning and opened up the door, and typical Jayananda's sitting on the floor with a picture of Prabhupada chanting. And Murli Krishna opens the door, he sees Jayananda there, and then he looks at the bed, and there's a picture of Prabhupada in the bed. And he goes, Jayananda, did you sleep in the bed? And he said, no, I just couldn't bring myself to it. It was such a nice bed, I had to give it to Prabhupada. And so that's, the kind of devotee Jayananda was. And Prabhupada was still there when Jayananda was, when he passed away. And Jayananda said that he was so special that we should, remember his appearance day every year, and that his picture should be on every Rath Yatra cart. There should be a picture of Jayananda, because he was so famous. He built the very first cart in San Francisco, and he built the carts, many of the carts in Los Angeles and in San Francisco, and then in New York, when, Prabhupada was really, Prabhupada, it was basically, the song, if you could make it here, you can make it anywhere. That's one of the lines of, out of New York, New York. And that was really when Prabhupada came to the West, Bhaktisiddhanta knew where New York was, and Prabhupada knew where New York was. They knew it was one of the biggest cities in the world and one of the most influential cities in the world. And so when Prabhupada actually had that, when he rode on the cart, on Subhadra's cart, they had 3 carts going down Fifth Avenue in New York. And Prabhupada was just beaming. And he was so happy that he had been able to bring, this huge festival. And it was in 1976, which was the 200th anniversary of the independence of the United States. And they're going right down Fifth Avenue with 3 carts, 3 huge carts. And Jayananda was dancing in front of that cart. And there's video of it. You can see Jayananda dancing and twirling and looking back at Prabhupada. And it's really, they were both in complete ecstasy. And Prabhupada he loved Jayananda so much. Jayananda would work so hard. And Prabhupada was always, when he would come to a temple like in LA or San Francisco, he'd say, where's Jayananda? Where's Jayananda? And the devotees would go and, Jayananda, Prabhupada wants to see you. And he goes, I'm, all dirty and everything. And, I've got work to do. And he wouldn't go. and they'd go back and Prabhupada, he said he's got work to do and I'll go get him. And finally Jayananda would come. And there's a story of one time when there were a number of sannyasis with Prabhupada and GBCs. And Prabhupada had been asking, where's Jayananda? And finally Jayananda came into the room. And Prabhupada was, very happy that he was there. And actually Prabhupada got Jayananda to come up and sit right beside him. And then he was sitting beside him, and then there was a sannyasi sitting over there. And Jayananda immediately kind of started to nod off. Prabhupada was talking to everybody, but Jayananda started falling asleep. And the sannyasi on the other side started elbowing, Jayananda to try to keep him awake. And eventually Prabhupada said, just let him sleep. He works harder than all of you. So, Prabhupada knew that Jayananda was doing stuff like practical service. He was the guy who would take out the garbage, and he would have he would wear this big clothespin on his nose and take out the garbage. And one time this new devotee came to the temple and they said, oh, you should go and serve with Jayananda and, take out the garbage with Jayananda. So this devotee went out in the back and there was Jayananda, heaving these big bags of garbage, all the stuff from the Sunday feast the week before. And, when you have all those plates and everything, they just start to smell pretty bad after a while, right? And so, but Jayananda's just heaving them in, and he's, chanting Hare Krishna at the top of his lungs, and apparently this devotee he served with him quite a while, and he eventually became a devotee, and he still remembers that he's thinking that if the devotee who takes out the garbage is this ecstatic, I can't imagine what the other devotees are like. So, and Murli Krishna talks about how Murli Krishna himself is not a small guy. He's about 6'3" and 220 pounds. And Jayananda, Murli had joined in Buffalo, New York. And in 1976, he had been sent to help Jayananda build the carts in New York. And he can remember going to Mangalarti, and Murli Krishna was, he said that he wasn't the most, they had been working hard all day and stuff. And so he would come into Mangalarti just kind of dragging like, Hare Krishna and Samsara. Some snooze aloka, and so he was, but Jayananda would come up behind him and pick him. He'd put his hands in his armpits from behind and throw him in the air. I mean, so Jayananda was strong. I mean, he was really a strong guy. And there's a story of another person who became a devotee from very strange circumstances, but they had this area down near the railroad tracks, which apparently did belong to Donald Trump. He didn't actually apparently have anything to do with signing the papers that gave them the land, but he did own it, and the devotees did build the carts on that land. So somehow or other he's got some bias credits. That's the only reason why he's probably doing what he's able to do these days without some big sinful reaction. But anyway, they were down by the railroad tracks, and one night the devotees, they'd finished, working for the day and had their prasadam, and they were sleeping on the cart. And all of a sudden they heard this, they had a bit of a tarpaulin, over the cart, and they were sleeping kind of under the tarp. And they heard these, funk, these bottles were hitting the tarp and rolling down and then smashing on the ground, these beer bottles. And they're like, what's going on? And finally, when they figured it out, a couple of the devotees, most of these guys were pretty big and strong, and they just said, hey, let's go beat the crap out of the guy. and Jayananda said, no. He ran, he jumped off the cart, and he went down, and there was prasadam underneath the cart, and he went and he made quickly a plate, and he said, take him a plate of prasadam. So the devotees were like, what? You want us to take him a plate? Yeah, take him a plate of prasadam. Okay, so they walked over to the guy, and here, this is for you. It's food. And the guy was like, I've been throwing beer bottles at you, and you're giving me food? Yeah. Well, you guys are okay. and apparently they brought him back to the cart. He slept there the rest of the night, and the next day and for the few days afterwards, he was working on the cart with all the other devotees and getting prasadam every day, and he became a devotee. Yeah. So, just see how Jayananda, he took somebody who was like a very much a Hiranyakashipu kind of character and just turned him into a devotee by that simple act of taking a prasadam. And then there's a really nice story that Murli Krishna tells about how the night before the Rath Yatra, they were putting up the canopies, and they'd put up Jagannath's canopy and Subhadra's canopy, and they had tested okay. And then they were wheeling up Balaram's canopy, and suddenly a big gust of wind just came right through the parking lot, and it blew the canopy over. So you know how there's a lot of metal tubing in the canopy that goes all, you've seen it in the inside, it goes up and down, and so all that tubing got twisted and crumpled and everything, and the devotees were like, oh no, what are we going to do? There's only going to be 2 carts for the Rath Yatra. And this was apparently at about 8 o'clock at night, and the Rath Yatra was at, they had to get the carts to the start of the parade at 10 o'clock in the morning. And so the Jayananda just said, no, you know what? We're going to make it happen. And he started just rousing them all up and does anybody need prasadam? And so he fed them prasadam and then let's go. And they just started working like crazy. And in the morning, Murli Krishna remembers this couple coming into the parking lot where the carts were. And Murli Krishna went over and said, yes, can I help you? And they just said, George and I, we live in that apartment building just over there. And we've been watching you guys all week long, putting these things together and making it, and then we saw the beautiful canopies going up and down, and then we saw the third canopy go up, and then we saw it blow over, and we were like, oh no, what's gonna happen? And then we saw that you all, rallied around and you all started working together, and George said, put on another cup of coffee, dear. We're staying up all night to watch these guys. And they stayed up all night watching, the devotional service of the devotees. And Murli said it was just amazing. This couple was so moved by and they were like, you guys are just incredible. So, in that way, there's just so many ways in which Jayananda could motivate devotees and get them to serve and, really help. And he just came from a very humble background. He was born in Ohio. He became he went through university as I think it was a mechanical engineer. And, but he felt that he didn't fit into sort of the engineering circles, and he kind of just left home and went out to LA and started driving cab. And he really had no purpose in life, but he knew that he was looking for something, but he just never found it. He was there for a couple of years, and then somebody told him about Srila Prabhupada and that he should come and see Srila Prabhupada, and he went and saw Prabhupada speak, and he said after hearing Prabhupada speak, he knew that's what he's been looking for his entire life. And he was driving cab, and he ended up, I believe some of it was, he saved some of the money, but some of it was also inheritance from his parents, or grandparents maybe. But he had $5,000, and he gave that to Prabhupada to print, I think it was the Nectar of Devotion. So Prabhupada always remembers that Jayananda was the first devotee who really gave him that initial donation to, really print a substantial number of books. And so Prabhupada loved Jayananda, and Jayananda loved Prabhupada. And, they just, even though they weren't together all the time, they just had that heart-to-heart connection. They really had that heart-to-heart connection. And so when Jayananda family passed away, Prabhupada said, he is the first pure devotee that I've, that has been manifested in ISKCON. And we should remember his disappearance day as one of the great saints, and it should be always remembered on this day, and it's the day before Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day. And it's a very special occasion. And there's many, if you just Google Jayananda, you can read all about his life and his pastimes, because there's so many more pastimes with Jayananda. And I never personally got to meet Jayananda, but just from the stories that I've heard and read, Jayananda was really an exceptional devotee. And we should remember it as, that somebody that comes from beginnings like us, just regular karmis in the Western world, and we've come in contact with Srila Prabhupada, we can come to that stage of pure devotion. And Prabhupada said he's gone back to Godhead. And Prabhupada said even if he didn't go, he will be taking a birth where he will definitely go in his next life. Of course, we know that, I mean, even when you become completely purified in this life, you generally go, Prabhupada explains that you generally go and you take birth wherever Krishna's pastimes are going on, in a universe where Krishna's pastimes are going on, and you become an associate of Krishna in a particular way, whichever, you know, your rasa is, and you get to associate with Krishna like that, and you get the opportunity to, you know, be with Krishna and get trained up how to be a devotee, which is really pretty special. And so that's in Gokula, and then after that birth, you go back to Goloka. So there's sort of one more birth after this birth, and then you go back. But, you know, it's interesting that the Transcendental Roadshow, you know, Prabhupada talks about the Transcendental Roadshow that Krishna and all his associates are part of. They go from universe to universe, you know, continually. And in fact, they are manifest in many universes at the same time. It's not like it ends here and then begins somewhere else. It's actually just, Prabhupada says, in one universe, he says, he uses the example like, it's noon where you may be, the sun is right above you, but somewhere else, you know, just at the other side of the United States, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's noon. In New York, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's the way the pastimes go on from universe to universe. So it may be the middle of Krishna's pastimes in this universe, but it's going on in some other universe. So it's constantly going on. And so that means there's actually many expansions of Arjuna, the Pandavas, Queen Kunti, Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, everybody, you know, they're all part of the Transcendental Roadshow. So they're all going from universe to universe. But, you know, and the Bhagavad Gita is being spoken, and as Krishna says, you know, Bhavanam Janmanam Ante Jnanamam Prapadyante. That, but he does say that many, many births, both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O son of Kunti. And so in that way, you know, Arjuna is continually in kind of a state of remembrance of Krishna because he's with Krishna in many of the universes, but he's also in a state of forgetfulness of Krishna at times as well. You know, when or not forgetfulness of Krishna, but he's in the state of illusion that he manifested at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, where he's thinking that morality is more important than devotional service. You know. So it's a very interesting, you know, the whole understanding that we have of spiritual life is so rich in terms of the knowledge and understanding of how we interact with the Supreme Lord. As compared to, I was brought up Roman Catholic, and I knew that I should, you know, worship God, but I didn't really know what that meant or how to do it. I mean, I was an altar boy, so I thought, okay, I'm helping worship God and like that. And you know, you take the body and blood of Christ at communion and like that, and you try to remember God. But there wasn't really that understanding of what it's like in the spiritual world and how to actually get there. I mean, in the spiritual world, everybody remembers Krishna at every second. So in this life, if we can bring ourselves to remember Krishna at every second, and then everything is for him, then we'll also be right there in the spiritual world with Krishna. I kind of went on and on and on there, but there's just a lot of interesting concepts. So anyway, I don't know what's next on the agenda, but...
Questions? If anybody has any questions, вопросы? Yes, like a couple of questions.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for a wonderful lecture. So you mentioned that Narasimhadev protects his devotees, right? Narasimhadev protects his devotees.
Yes.
But sometimes difficult things happen with devotees. Sometimes they get attacked. Sometimes they lose things. Things get stolen, things like that. So from that perspective, how to understand Narasimhadev's kind of involvement? Is it also the way to protect the devotee from the attachment, or how to understand these situations?
Well, Prabhupada explains that, we all come with karma, right? And we're trying to work out our karma. And by chanting Hare Krishna, we're becoming free from karma from so many previous lifetimes. And so the protection of Lord Nrsimhadev and Krishna is such that Prabhupada says that if you cut your finger in the kitchen, you should have probably been killed. Somebody should have probably stabbed you, but you only got a little cut. So there may be terrible things that happen to devotees, but it could have been way worse. I mean, even death, but it could have been way worse. How? That you died not remembering Krishna, right? So, and it's interesting that there's I can remember reading, where was it? I believe it may even be in the Prabhupada's daughters, the book that's compiled of all the remembrances of all of Prabhupada's female disciples. It's really an amazing book. And I'm not sure if it's in there, but anyway, it's one devotee, a female devotee, who lost their child. I think he was 8 or 9 years old when he died, which is really a horrible thing, right? It's probably one of the hardest things, because it's not the natural way that you die, that the children die before their parents. And so the parents really take it hard. I have another friend of mine just out in LA right now. His son was 40 years old and he passed away at 40. And he's really hurting because of it. I mean, he understands the transcendental nature of his son and everything else, but it's still, the pain is very, very hard, because they had a very close relationship. So, anyway, Prabhupada, they were lamenting a lot. And Prabhupada said, actually, for a child to take birth in this movement, they are very special. The demigods, Prabhupada writes that in the Krishna book, that the demigods are waiting in line to take birth in this movement. And so they're really special, and they're devotees. And they may have a bit of karma to work out, but then they get taken back. And Prabhupada said, and they don't, right up until the age, pretty much the age of puberty, it's about 11 or 12, there's no karma accrued during that time. They're not getting any bad karma from any of their activities, because they're not fully functioning, morally and devotionally yet. And so they're not accruing anything. So if they pass away in that state, they're really in a glorious position to go back home, back to Godhead. So Prabhupada pacified the parents with that understanding. So even though death may even happen, it can still be a glorious thing. Even though it may be hard at the time when it happens, we're touched by it. I mean, I know I've lost my parents, and you never know when anybody around you could die, or you yourself are going to die. And if you just put it into Krishna's hands and allow it to happen, I mean, you can still there may be some lamentation there, but it's lamentation, but with that extra devotional layer of that they are eternal spirit souls, that they did get the chance to, like my parents got the chance to take prasadam, and my mother especially, when she passed away, we were there, and she had a garland around her neck. We had put tulsi on her tongue. the shringa oil on her head, and it was pretty amazing. I can remember we were right at the very last, on the last day. She had been in a coma for 4 or 5 days, so completely unconscious. But having worked in a hospital, I've seen this many times, that just before death, a lot of times people will kind of rouse from a coma and kind of look around. They may not talk, some of them do talk, but some of them may just look around and kind of, looks like they're very aware of what's going on. And anyway, my mother just opened her eyes. And Purnamasi said, "Oh, she's opened her eyes." And I went and I took my mother's head in my hands. I kind of leaned over the bed and I was holding her head. And I just said, and she was looking right at me. And I said, "Ma," because she had often expressed that she wanted to be with my father. But she was also a very religious person. She went to church every Sunday and everything. And so she had chanted Hare Krishna. She whenever we went to her house, she would just cook vegetarian, and she was really a caring, loving mother in that way. And so she was okay with Krishna, and I can remember holding her head, and I just said, "If you want to go and be with Dad, or Krishna, or God, whatever you understand, it's okay. We are all taken care of here. It's all right." And without a word of a lie, a smile came across her face. She went, and her last breath, like her head was right here, she breathed her last breath right into my face. I was like, wow, what an amazing way to die. And even when I think about it nowadays, I don't think of crying. I think of, wow, that was fantastic. It was really, really amazing. And so, Krishna can do amazing things. He can arrange for things to happen. He's arranged for all of us to be here. And he keeps arranging that we can keep serving him and eventually go back to him. And depending upon our individual courses, we may make it in this life, it may be another life, but Prabhupada seemed to feel that, if you just engaged in my program, I've got the key to the back door. So Prabhupada's going to let us in. If we are sincere and we really want to serve Krishna, Prabhupada and Krishna will make the arrangement that we will serve them. It's just that sincerity and that loyam, that desire to serve. Yeah. That almost greed. It's just like we don't want anything else. We just want to serve. Yeah. And that's the natural position of our souls, actually. That's who we really are. We really do have that. So right now we just have this covering that's going, no, I want something else. I'd rather have this or that or, whatever. Yeah. Anything else?
Thank you very much for this incredible story. Passing away your mom.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and I remember going out and telling the nurse, and I said, my mom just passed away, and there were a few tears in my eyes, but I felt really good. I just felt like, wow, she's gone somewhere where I want to go. I could almost see that she was seeing the Vishnu Dutas, because she definitely wasn't seeing the Yama Dutas. It was just like, she had this smile. It was just like, wow. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing about Jayananda Prabhu. It's probably the first time we hear about Jayananda Prabhu from one of Prabhupada's disciples.
Oh yeah, Jayananda, yeah.
Thank you for remembering him.
Yeah, and definitely Google Jayananda. It's really encouraging to just see how it, and you kind of go, hey, I can maybe be a little bit like Jayananda and do things in the way that Jayananda did, and when you do that, then, Prabhupada will be happy, and the devotees will be happy, everybody will be happy.
I read about him, but I never heard one of Prabhupada's disciples speaking about him, and it was really precious.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
I will definitely read more
Yeah, that's
following
right.
your advice.
Yeah. Yeah, special saint, or ISKCON saint. Yeah, of course, now we're having many ISKCON saints. All of us should become ISKCON saints. I mean, you know, there are so many, when you go to Vrindavan and you see some of the samadhis, and then you see all these little samadhis around. I mean, there's a lot of great souls who have served Krishna and gone back to Krishna, and we can be part of that, you know. Oh Lord, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. Yeah, we want to go marching into the spiritual world. Boy, I started dancing like Trump.
I guess it's time to dance a little.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Krishnadas Kaviraj Prabhu ki
Jai.
Thank you very much.